Hey guys, Ryan from Spyker Workshop, and today I'm going to be showing you how to put together the elevation and recoil unit for the 1/6 scale Dragon Sherman. So I'm just going to jump right into it. So first thing we need to do is drill out these holes to get them ready to be assembled. Here's the various drills that we'll be using for this, and I want to start off with the 3/32 drill bit. So for both of these two parts, all these holes that you see here, like all these and that one, all these are drilled out with 3/32. And then the only one that's different is these two top holes are drilled with a 1/8 inch drill, just on these two here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I forgot, these four holes here also need to be 1/8 inch. But I went ahead and drilled these already, so set those aside. Next are these three support bars here. These holes need to also be drilled with a 1/8 inch. So I got those drilled. And then the next thing are these servo mounts here. These will be a 1/8 inch drill here, these two. And then these four on this side will be a 3/32 drill. So those are all drilled. And then next, these two holes here on this part need to be drilled with 3/32. And also these two holes here, 3/32. And then on these two, there's one more hole that needs to be drilled on the end here, and that is using a 1/8 inch drill. So there I have those. And then this part, there's just one hole on the bottom, which is also a 1/8 inch drill. And then these two parts here, all these can be enlarged to a 1/8 inch size. And then on these same pieces, the small 5/64 inch, they're kind of hard to see on these parts, but they are printed in here. You can see one right there, if the camera will focus. On the back side, it's probably easier to see. You can see the two holes for it. So I'll drill those two holes in there. So then it looks like that. And then this part, the hole on top, it's kind of sloppy because the higher a print goes, this was the last thing I printed, so it got kind of overheated. But it doesn't matter for this. But this hole needs to be a 3/32 right here. There we go. And then there's these holes. Some of these are already drilled, but on these two parts, these two holes here need to be 1/8 inch on both sides. And then also I already glued them in by the time I'm making this, but you get these two parts here, and these four holes need to be drilled with a 3/32 drill on those four. And then one last thing we need to drill with a 9/64 drill bit. This stock part that comes with the kit, the real tank actually used screw bolts right here to connect it into the hull here. That's why there's these two extra things here, and my kit actually uses those as the mounting points for this thing. So you need to use the 9/64 to drill through those. And I should have mentioned that this whole recoil kit and elevation only works on the 76mm Sherman. I'll probably have to come out with something else for the 90mm or the 105mm version. So once you have those drilled out, then we can start putting some stuff together. You can see I already did it here, but your kit will come with a ring. You want to glue that ring in here like this, using like super glue or ABS glue, and make sure it's flush with the outside like that. And then after you glue it, take a file to it and file down the edges. You're going to have to remove a little bit of material and file it down until this part can fit through the hole here. And then for now we can set that aside. These bearings will be going in here, and you use 2 of these number 4 by 1/2 inch sheet metal screws, and screw that on there to clamp the bearing on like that on both of these. So here I have the bearings mounted in there, and you'll notice one side of this is smoother than the other, and we want this smooth side to be facing in, and then we're going to be gluing these in place here. So these will go on the inside of these arms, and when you glue them on here, just use the, just visually line up the bearing and then glue these in place. Don't glue the top though to this, just glue this large bottom section here and glue both of those in place. So I skipped ahead a little bit. After I glued these parts onto the mount here, then I went ahead and glued the mount into the whole turret like this, and then I took the screws and the bearings back out of the part. We only needed them to align it for gluing for now. So then next thing we'll be doing, next we'll be getting these ready to go. Take the bearings and put them on the posts here, and then we'll take these 2 parts like this, and using a small screw that's in the kit, screw it in the back side here like this on both of them. So here I have them screwed down, you can see, and there's a right and left to these parts, and you'll want them to look like this here, and you can tighten this down pretty good so it's a little hard to move, and then angle it like 45 degrees each way. And then next we're going to take this part here, and in your tank kit you have a machine gun part, and that's what this part is for here. You'll want to test fit it, but don't glue it together yet. If it doesn't fit together there well, just use a X-Acto knife to kind of clean it up until you get a nice fit. But don't glue it yet, because this we also need to screw in on this side, and using the same screw, go all the way through there and then screw that onto here. So I have that screwed down, and you can see eventually this will be the machine gun mount that sticks out that hole over there, but I'm going to wait to glue that until later. So next we're going to want to get a servo mounted. You can mount the servo on either side, but I'm going to do it on this side just for the video. And my website, you can order the servos through me for this kit, but they won't be the ones shown in the video because I'm just using what I have on hand. But the ones in the kit will be plastic geared servos for these pieces because it's so light duty, you don't need the crazy metal geared kind that I was using for the turret rotation. So I'm going to use 4 of the screw that we've been using, and I'm going to screw this in here. So once you have that screwed in, the next thing is we want to connect these 2 pieces together, and the way that we do that is we use these support bars, and there's 3 of them, and we use those same screws and screw in the support bar to brace each one of these together like this, and then this one here, and then there's one on the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So here you can see how it looks when it's assembled. And you'll want to just make sure that that these 2 bearings are aligned, because you'll be able to move these, but once we install it in the turret, you won't be able to. Yeah, so then the next thing is to get the barrel ready. This part that comes with the kit, we're going to be gluing this. You can see there's a notch on the barrel, there's also a notch on the printed part here that's not on the other side. You want those two notches to line up, and then you can glue that in place. I'd recommend like super glue, just because you can remove it later if you need to. So I'm going to super glue that in place. So I have that glued together now, and we can test fit it here. The way it works is you load the barrel in from the back through those grooves, and then you can see how the recoil actually works. It kind of slides down those rails there. And the next thing we need to do is get the linkage ready to go for the servo. And I'll show you how to do the linkage while it's outside of the machine, but once you install it, you might need to adjust your linkage to get the right, final position. But I'm going to show you how to do it for starters here. So one of these servo horns that comes with the kit, we need to attach to the horn of the servo. So I like to use these circular horns, and to get it ready to go, I'm going to drill a 3/32 hole through the ends of this part. So once you have that drilled, there's some really tiny screws in the kit that we'll use for this, and you can decide, you might have to play around with this too to get everything lined up right, but you can put it this way or this way, and it makes this different offset if you need, some adjusting for it. I'm gonna have it go, I think this way, like this. So I'm gonna screw it together, and you screw it in from the back side here, like this. So here you can see it assembled. And then your kit will come with some of these parts here. We need to make the linkage that will be running in between these things. And your kit will come with these control rod ends, balls, and threaded rod. The way to put these together is set the ball in like that, and then take a wrench, and then if you push it up, the ball will pop into place most of the time. There we go. And then do that to both. And then we need to feed in the threaded rod on both ends. I'm going to go ahead and do that. And this is the part that you'll have to adjust on your own, depending on your servo center point and all sorts of different things. But then we need to kind of like test fit where it will be in the servo here. I'm just going to put it on there. And the gun will sit approximately like here when it's installed in the tank, kind of almost flush with this, but you'll have to do some final adjustments when you get it in there. But you'll want to turn your servo on and power it, and then depending on what radio system you're using, because I'm not offering any electronics to simulate the recoil, you'll have to either use some sort of tank controller or a programmable radio that you can set up to simulate the forward and backward motion of this. But you'll want to center your servo where it's like 45 degrees one way, so then when it does the full 90 swing, like this will be the full swing. So when it's in this position, what we're after here is hooking up the control rod end there, and then screwing it into one of these holes on the arm here. And we'll use, in the kit there's a machine screw, washer, and nut. You'll use those to connect it to here, and then you'll use one of those same screws we've been using to connect the other end to that plastic part. You can screw it down from the top. So I'm going to go ahead and play around with it and see what I can get to work here. So here you can see I have my linkage all set up using that sheet metal screw here and then the machine screw on the other end. And I'm going to go ahead and turn my servo on and find a nice center point before I actually screw this onto it. So here you can see I have the servo on, and I'm centering it so it's all the way forward. and then lining up the barrel, and then you can unscrew the threaded rod to adjust the length of it. But for now I'm just going to put it on there and see what it looks like once we get it installed in the tank. Yeah, see, mine's a little bit too long, so I'm going to take it out and screw that in a little bit. So here I have it fitting pretty nicely. You can see the length of the rod there. I didn't screw it in yet. I would wait to screw that in until you get it in the tank, which we're going to be doing in a second here. But you can see the throw of this here. It's actually quite a good amount of recoil, if I can get the front of the barrel in there. And you can always adjust the amount of throw using a different hole on that swing arm. But it's a really nice setup. So I'm going to unplug this and get ready for the next step. So next we're going to mount this in the turret. And I forgot, these should actually be 45 degrees downwards. And then make that machine gun mount line back up forward like that. Same with this side, aim it down 45 degrees. So this we just insert through like so, and then those bearings will sit in those bearing mounts that we assembled earlier. And then just make sure that out the front you have these two sticks sticking out, these holes here. And then, like I showed earlier in the video, I'm going to go ahead and use these parts with 4 of those screws and screw the clamps over the bearings. So there I have the bearing mounts screwed in. And you can see once you have those clamped together that the whole unit becomes pretty rigid. It's actually really nice. We'll get to the elevation servo in a minute here, but for now we're going to switch over to the front. And you can see those sticks are what we'll be attaching this to in a second here. So one thing to note is this ring might need some sanding to open it up if the recoil is a little too tight after we get this together. So it wouldn't hurt to just sand it a little bit. This is that ring that we glued in here earlier in the video. So to actually mount this, we're going to use the slightly too larger screws that come in the kit. And these will be going in through these holes, through these parts here. I'm going to go ahead and screw that together. So here I have the mantle screwed together. And probably should have mentioned, but the inside of where those sticks are, I used a file to make one of the edges harder, like a more sharp angle. That way you get more up and down throw out of it. Let's see, yeah, you can kind of see what I'm talking about through the hole there. Where the stick actually hits into the plastic, you might want to take a file too, so you can get a little bit more throw out of it. But you can't get too much because eventually it'll just hit the top plate here. But this is pretty good, I think, for mine. So the next thing is to start on the elevation servo, and I skipped ahead a little bit, and it's pretty much the exact same thing that we did for the recoil, where I drilled the hole and screwed the small screws in with the servo horn, and then I got another one of the control arms assembled. And then one part changed from the beginning of the video. This used to look really flat, but I ended up raising it up off the floor more. But it's still the same thing. You use a 3/32 inch drill just on the top, go down like maybe half an inch or something. And then to get the servo ready, these two small parts, I'm going to screw them on like this on the top here with these small screws. And then next is to actually screw the servo in here. and then use the 4 screws like that. So I have it screwed in now, and this makes it so after it's installed in the turret, if you need to do any adjustments to the servo, you'll only have to remove these 2 top screws, and then you can pull the servo out to do anything you need to. Because this will actually be epoxying or gluing into the hull eventually, or into the turret, I mean. So here I have the servo connected with an extension cord to the receiver here. I'm not going to screw this in yet, but I'm just showing you that you want your servo throw to be centered, so you have 45 down and then 45 up. So once we have the servo centered where it is throwing like this, you can see how I did this here where I have the offset of this facing this way, and then I have the control rod arm in between the servo and that, because it's kind of complex to get the elevation just right in this thing, including the length of this. Yeah, I just measured to give you guys a ballpark. From here to here, it's 32 millimeters where I have it set right now. And then we're going to take the control rod part with one of those small screws, and we're actually screwing it into this upper hole here. And if you tip the turret all the way up, you have just enough room to get the screwdriver in here to tighten that in. And then eventually you'll have to epoxy or glue this into your turret, and by that I mean on these 2 small areas here. They'll kind of come where my finger is here and then here. But you'll have to play with the length of this rod and possibly the spacing on here, depending on what servo you're using. So I'll just show you holding the turret all the way down, so that's as low as it goes. You can kind of feel where it will sit, and then I'll just hold it there by hand for now and show you guys the actual throw of it here. So to me that seems pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and actually epoxy this into the hull. So here I epoxied in the Elevation Servo. My camera will pick up that. I just kind of mixed up some and kind of poured it in here and then gooped it around the sides a little bit. So it's pretty well secure in there. And there's enough space to not block the turret hatch. And yeah, here's just one more close-up of how I have all the linkages set up. That screws in the top hole right here, and then depending on your setup you'll have to adjust the length of that the rod, and potentially adjust what hole that's in there. But yeah, other than that, that's pretty much it. There's kind of a lot of fine-tuning. I found this the hardest thing of the entire project of converting this tank. This is quite a complex thing that I had to come up with to do the elevation and recoil and stuff. But yeah, here's with the servo on here. And then let me show you it from the outside. You'll have to play around with your settings too to get it to go up just a little bit more. You can adjust the length of the the that threaded rod. I mean, there's tons of things you guys can do to fine tune it. Let me show you the recoil. I think that came out really sweet. It's pretty quiet. And it goes back, I'll measure it here. Yeah, it goes, the recoil is 2.5 inches with this current setup, which is pretty good, I think. I'm not sure how much the actual tank does. But yeah, that wraps this video up. Next video, I'll probably have this painted and driving around outside again with all the features hooked up. So yeah, this video ran pretty long because this, like I said, is the most complicated part of the whole build, I think, so far. So let me know what you guys think in the comments and stuff, and thanks for watching.